So welcome today to Gillian Churchill from Movement to Work. We're really looking forward to the session with her where we're going to be looking at social mobility. For those of you who aren't familiar with the work of the Digital Poverty Alliance, my name's Elizabeth. I'm the interim CEO at the DPA, and we are aiming to end digital poverty once and for all in the UK by 2030. And we do this by bringing together industry, government, charities, whether this is at local level or national level, and convening to look at solutions to some of the big problems that sit behind digital poverty. Many of you will know that we recently released our national delivery plan, which sets out 6 key missions to end digital poverty, as I say, by 2030. And we mainly do this through advocacy and research, including this webinar that we're running today, and also through a range of delivery projects, which again help people who need that support right now and can't wait until 2030 for that. But whilst we're doing that, also help us to build that business case and feed into our research around why digital poverty is so important to tackle and how that impacts on society, the economy, and how we can ensure that Britain can be mighty connected nation that the government so frequently talks about. As I say, today Gillian is going to be focusing on the social mobility piece, particularly around young people. I'm delighted to introduce her. Gillian, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Movement to Work?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today, Elizabeth, and hi everyone who's joined. My name's Gillian Churchill and I have the huge privilege of being CEO of Movement to Work. For those that haven't heard about us, I'll give you a very quick sort of whistle-stop tour, but we are a charity and we work with employers to create work experience and pre-employability programs for young people to give them that much needed work experience, but also the tools and the skills that they need to help make them more work ready. And we do this in partnership with a network of youth outreach organisations, other charities, partners and training providers to create those programmes and opportunities. And what's really key is that we focus on young people aged 16 to 30 who are NEET, so they're not in employment, education or training, and they face significant barriers to employment. So for businesses, the benefits of running a Movement to Work programme is that they get access to amazing young talent, diverse talent that they might not otherwise have been able to tap into. And actually, a lot of the employers that we work with develop their pre-employability programmes now, which feed directly into their talent acquisition strategies. So we have Movement to Work programmes with the likes of BAE Systems and Accenture, and these programmes feed directly into apprenticeships, which is obviously fantastic for that, career path for that young person to continue in that organisation and a supported sort of pathway. So that kind of strategic planning of our programmes to align with live job opportunities is really critical and obviously works for all, for the business and for the young person. We were founded in 2013 and we've helped to deliver more than 155,000 opportunities for young people across the country. And we're very fortunate that we have employers across a whole range of sectors, from hospitality and retail through to engineering and technology. And more than 55% of those young people who complete a Movement to Work programme go on to find a job or go back into education or further training. So some really good outcomes, but, and this is the huge but, we know that there is a lot more to do. I mean, youth unemployment, I think it's currently sitting at 11.3%. It's still nearly 3 times the national average and has sat there now, I think, for the best part of the past decade. And the recent ONS stats too showed that there are 770,000 young people who are not in employment or full-time education. So that's a huge amount of young people. And we know that of that group, around 62% are inactive. So they are not looking or they're unable to work just now. And the rest, the 38%, are unemployed. So it's quite a kind of troubling picture. We know that the pandemic has not been kind to many people, but particularly young people. We've seen a real increase in mental health issues and challenges, anxieties around socialising and coming into the workplace or different environments. So these are things that we are kind of helping to work through with our employers just now. So that's movement to work in a bit of a nutshell.
Thank you, Gillian. And I mean, hearing about those outcomes, yes, it's a massive picture with so many young people facing unemployment right now. But Movement to Work is just doing fantastic work to provide those opportunities for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to find them, wouldn't be able to make those connections.
Absolutely.
If you do, as Elliot said, if you do have any questions for Gillian as we chat over the next few minutes, do put them in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll try and come to as many as we can. Also, do let us know who you are in the chat. We'd love to hear what organisation you represent, where in the country you are. So do get a bit of a conversation going. So Gillian, you've talked about the programs that you run and the outcomes that those are delivering for these young people, and the importance of working with employers. And there's an amazing roster of companies and organisations you work with. Thinking about those employers to deliver the Movement to Work programs, what role do they play in helping to tackle digital poverty?
They have an incredibly important role to play. I mean, businesses as a whole, they've got a responsibility to support and develop not only their current, but their future workforces as well, to ensure that they've got the skills, the knowledge, the tools they need to do, their jobs successfully. And this obviously includes equipping them with digital skills that they need to succeed, in the workplace, but also in their lives more generally, because we know that it's not distinct. The two things don't exist in isolation. There's a blurring between the two. And I think looking through the lens of young people who are NEET, what I've said is obviously we work with businesses to create programs that help young people gain those much needed skills and tools that will help to ready them to come into employment, to help them be more confident in themselves. And we know that those not currently in employment likely need the most support as well. And I've got a little bit of data here, but the Essential Digital Skills Study showed that people out of work are 4 times more likely to lack the digital skills needed for today's workplaces. And 20%, which is circa 1.6 million people, can't do any of the digital tasks required to be proficient at work. So I think it's absolutely critical that businesses come together, to help address this. So, we work with employers to create the programs, and at that sort of creation, that first step, we ask them to think sort of holistically about the support and the training and, that young people are going to require. And I think, just a couple of examples, but one that springs to mind is Tesco. So they use Movement to Work programs to recruit customer services assistants. But sitting alongside that critical customer service training, up there is digital skills development. It goes hand in hand. And we see that, throughout more of our programs, which is really fantastic. But I think one thing that I wanted to touch on here as well, I think there's for businesses and for everyone, I think we need to understand and acknowledge as well that not all young people, they're not digitally proficient or have those sort of digital knowledge or skills that are required either in their personal or professional lives. Gen Z are frequently referred to as digital natives, but we know that not all young people have access to technology or the means of going online, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I think to that point as well, we also need to be really careful that for young people that do have digital access, they may have a phone or a laptop, they may not be digitally literate. And they don't have those digital skills just because they have a phone. And I think, just current climate and environment that we're living in, clearly cost of living, it's really hitting hard. And I think, it will undoubtedly further impact, access for certain groups and communities to that technology and to connectivity, etc. as well.
And that's so key, because one of the myths that we come up with against time and time again is that young people are connected, young people have all the skills. Different generations see Gen Z on TikTok and go, yes, digital native. And actually, does that translate into workplace skills? Does that mean that every young person has the skills and the connectivity they need? It doesn't. So talking about employers, how important is it for employers to see themselves as part of the solution? It's not about other people finding solutions, it's about them taking the action.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. There's a responsibility there. The success of any business is reliant on its people, skilled people, productive people. This in turn, like you said, Elizabeth, fuels the country's economic growth and development. So it's absolutely critical that employers see themselves, in that space of being part of the solution and helping to design that solution as well. Future.now, I think, reported that by 2030, basic digital capability is set to become the UK's biggest skills gap. We're in 2023, that's not long, but they've also stated quite crucially, I think it was 7 in 10 business leaders believe that they have a digital skills gap currently in their organisation, and that more than nearly actually 2.5 million people in work do not have the basic level of skills. So businesses have to be fundamentally part of that solution. And I think, clearly upskilling, current existing workforce is incredibly important there, and a focus on continued learning and development in the workplace. But our focus, as I've mentioned, is on, young people before they're at that point of entry into the workplace. And I think that's really key as well, because these young people are our future workforce. They are our future leaders. So we have to do everything that we can just now to set them up for success. And that's everything, from being able to help them search for jobs online, to learn about a certain organisation or a certain sector to see if it's for them and whether they feel that they'd be a good fit, in that organisation, to helping them apply for jobs, right through to actually setting them up for workplace activities. So, feeling confident on a laptop, joining a Zoom, being able to communicate with their colleagues and or customers, digitally. So that's why, digital for us, it's so important.
Here's what I found.
Oh, sorry, and Siri's talking to me here. An example of technology just doing what it wanted. That's why digital for us is so incredibly important, and is really sort of like the fundamental piece of what we kind of set our programs up around. And we're very, very lucky that we have a wide range of employers, some I've talked about, that really see the value in this, because they see that as, key to their future success as well. It's preparing employees for the jobs of today, but also for the future across a whole range of sectors, and providing the building blocks for sustainable and long careers. But one thing I just wanted to flag here as well, actually, what we've also seen are a number of movement to work employers using their programs as a way to help address the digital skills shortage that they may be experiencing as well, especially and particularly actually in the tech sector. So they're using that again as that kind of talent sort of feeder to bring them into the organisation and then support their continued development as needed.
And that's fantastic, because we see tech and digital moving so fast. It's so easy to become behind on the latest thing, which then becomes actually the norm for so many people. And actually being able to build those skills, as you say, from point of entry into the workforce, just means that you're not seeing a bigger and bigger gap between the skills that you have as an individual and the needs of an employer. You have talked about the movement to work programs, and you've talked a little bit about the employability programs. What role do you play as an organisation in supporting businesses to make sure they are addressing this as part of their employability work?
Okay, yes, so at that sort of programme creation stage, like I said, it's a digital first sort of mindset that we try to, to instill. So we've worked with Accenture and Barclays, we've created toolkits, best practice guidance, and actually we've also developed an employability curriculum alongside Accenture, and that offers up access to a whole array of fantastic digital assets for free, which young people can log in themselves to do at their own pace as part of their programs. But also it's not just exclusive to Accenture and Barclays. Indeed, those assets have been opened up more broadly, which is fantastic, to other employers who may want to take elements of that and build it into their own programs. But we recommend, as part of that employability curriculum, that young people start their journey with our digital skills for work and life course, going back to that point about the fact that they're not separate. So they can really learn about digital and how it's changing and shaping like professional and personal lives, how it's affecting and changing certain industries and sectors and jobs. But critically, and probably the most important bit as well, gives them the opportunity to actually develop skills that they need, you know, in the digital age that we now find ourselves in. And they can self-select modules that are relevant to them, their knowledge gaps, their business, their role, everything from AI and social media to web analytics, digital marketing, user experience. But there's a lot more sort of the fundamentals there as well, which are really probably just as important, if not more, around how to stay safe online, how to handle and protect information, both your personal and company information, how to use a digital device, and back to that sort of communication point again as well, you know, learning to set up an email, how to draft an email, how to create a shareable document with your colleagues, again, back to that sort of protecting information, and, you know, how to join and set up Zoom meetings, you know, like we're doing just now, because in a post-pandemic world, you know, we've clearly seen a massive increase in online and hybrid working. So it's absolutely key that young people have those skills and know how to do that comfortably and confidently. But I think, you know, giving them that basic or base, should I say, of those foundation skills, we also recommend to them, you know, a focus on their lifelong learning. And it's to your point, Elizabeth, you know, technology doesn't stand still. It's evolving, you know, at pace, you know, it's not static. Right now, I think there's so much buzz around like AI and how to use AI in the workplace, whether it's, you know, autonomous systems in manufacturing or ChatGPT, you know, again, how to use it to enhance customer experience, how we can use it to be more efficient. You know, I've dabbled in it myself and I'm, you know, part in awe and part scared about it all, quite frankly. But it's really about empowering the young people, I think, to help them understand where they might have gaps, provide them with the support and the access to the learning to help address them. And, you know, I think it's just about helping everyone actually understand that it's, you know, it doesn't stand still, and we all need to continue to think about where those gaps might arise as that technology continues to evolve. And I think a company that's doing this really well in our network is Accenture. So their movement to work program, you know, is very much around preparing young people for, you know, the digital economy. It's a multi-week sort of placement, so they get their employability skills training, but they do a lot of focus training as well around sort of programming and testing and digital concepts, for example. And they've had some amazing outcomes from that program of young people who have then gone in as technology apprenticeships or apprentices. And then if they want to, that can lead to a degree in a technology subject as well. So it's just that continuing sort of pathway.
And as you say, it feeds into so many different areas of work. Almost every career is going to have that digital element. We've had a stat check in the Q&A. As someone's connection cut out. Was it 1.6 million young people that don't have the necessary IT skills? Was that the stat?
I think it was 2.4 million. I can double check. And I don't think that was specifically young people. That was just from the future.now piece. I'll put that into the chat. I'll find it in my notes and I'll put it in before we log off. So, and I'll let you know where I took that from, the source as well.
Fantastic. I think we and our attendees are always fascinated by the scale of the issue. And I think for a lot of people, particularly hearing about the impact on younger generations is really key. You talked a little bit there about how things have changed since the pandemic hit us and we've started to come out of that. Indeed, we'd probably have run this event as a live event rather than as a webinar a few years ago. Hybrid working has really ramped up, particularly. Yes, there's a movement to get people back into the office, but there's a lot of remote work, there's a lot of hybrid work. How have you managed that transition to spending part of the time in the office and part of the time at home, particularly in employability programs?
That's a Great question. So during the pandemic, clearly we saw a huge pivot towards wholly online programs and placements, which was obviously great because it allowed programs to continue for young people, but equally it took away perhaps some of that more, crucial in the actual work environment, hands-on type experience that they may have got otherwise. So yeah, it was a challenge. How do we find the most sort of creative and innovative ways to continue work experience and that training for young people online, whilst making it as engaging and as fruitful, like an experience for that young person as well? So we worked with some of our businesses to produce a toolkit on how to create, a virtual movement to work program. Tools, best practice, basically just like considerations for employers to really think about what a virtual program would look like for their organization specifically, and what do they need to take into account to make that run successfully. And I'll come into some of those sort of considerations. Just wanted to say here, we have seen some programs move back to face-to-face delivery, but on the whole, we have seen an adoption of hybrids. We've seen a bit of face-to-face and a bit of online, and that's across most of the organisations actually that we do work with. And I think clearly one of the biggest advantages of that is that it does help to open it up perhaps to young people in more rural or remote communities, whereas if it was wholly, face-to-face program delivered in its entirety, you would be or could be excluding certain parts, of the country. So it's really helped to take an element of that location piece out of it, albeit there might still be some face-to-face, but much to a lesser degree than there was previously. But as I said, taking something online or even as a hybrid has some really, really big considerations for employers to think about. Technology is first and foremost, hardware requirements. What does that young person have access to? What do they not have access to? What software are they familiar with? What we've seen is businesses gifting or lending hardware to young people, laptops, Wi-Fi dongles, etc., to make sure that everyone had the same starting point for their programs. And like I said, it's just that fair chance to participate for everyone. And one thing that's still ongoing actually, which is really, really fantastic, I think it's Virgin Media and O2 and the Good Things Foundation. They've just opened up like their 1,000th national data hub bank, and that provides mobile access, calls, data, etc., which is just fantastic and much needed, obviously, just now with the kind of current environment that we find ourselves in. But again, other considerations, the virtual tools that are needed to support the delivery of a programme, it's highly likely you're going to need a range of those. So actually businesses need to think about covering the licensing costs. That cost can't go to the young person, or indeed using free platforms, but making sure in advance that you test the parameters of that free platform, because there probably will be some barriers there with free versus paid for versions. Ensuring participants are supported to set up their tech. That was really, really critical and a key bit of feedback actually that we received, helping them go through that process supported before the program starts. So they know how to log into the laptop, so they know how to go onto the Zoom or whatever platform that's been utilised for that program, and it can at least familiarise themselves with it. So there's nothing new or daunting, on day one. And again, it's really, really critical in this hybrid sort of environment as well, is that it's a live experience. It needs to be led by people. It needs to be facilitated. It can't just be an online learning platform, because we will lose our young people. That lack of engagement, we will lose people. So it really needs to have that live interactive element to it. And last but by no means least, but you need to gather feedback and evolve your programs. You need to listen to the young people that have gone through it. Did they enjoy it? Did they feel engaged, and apply those lessons learned just to make sure that your program is always fit for purpose, and isn't leading to digital exclusion in any shape or form. So that's just a few of the things, but that's some of the guidance that we pulled together, particularly during the pandemic, but still stand now in that sort of hybrid way of working. So, there's different ways that employers can obviously deliver. They've all got their benefits, they've all got their challenges, but, we're here to guide. That's our purpose, to help guide employers sort of through whatever route that they choose to deliver their programs. And really key to that is the open sharing of lessons learned, of knowledge from employers who perhaps have gone before them and gone through that process. And that's the kind of secret to it, I think, as well, as that transparency of we've did that, it worked or it didn't, and we can continue to share and take it from there.
And it sounds like there's a huge amount of support for employers. If we've got any employers on here today, they must surely be thinking, as I would be, actually, there's a lot that Movement to Work can do to advise on pitfalls that people have seen before and incredible successes that people have seen before, and all of that lessons learned piece to make it the best experience actually for both sides.
There's definitely, yes, there's definitely a willingness from our employer members. It's fair to say we've got people who would be considered competitors probably, by people outside looking into us, but when they become part of the movement, and I should add here, it's not a pitch, but it's completely free what we do. There's no contractual, there's no money, handed over. We're a charity. So everything that we do with employers and our partners is 100% free. But there's, like I said, that's the peers, they come together. There's that willingness to share, because at the end of the day, they've come together to help tackle a common problem. So any sort of competitiveness goes out the window, because ultimately everyone just wants to do what's best for young people and for their business at the same time. So yeah, there's a real willingness to come together and share their experiences, which is fab.
That is great. There are so many societal problems that can only be solved by people working together and not working against each other. Yes. So it's really good to hear. And we've heard quite a bit about the employers. Have you got any specific success stories about some of the young people who've completed one of the Movement to Work programs and the impact that the digital side has had on them?
Yes, I mean, there's thousands, absolute thousands, but there's a couple that do stick out. So there's a young lady called Zoha, and Zoha came to the UK. She had faced some enormous personal challenges, and came to Britain to settle and live her life here. And she heard about Movement to Work through her local job centre. So she went to Unilever for a 4-week placement, and in her own words, she said it gave her the opportunity to show her talents in a way that she had never been able to in the past. So during that placement, critically, she threw herself into developing her digital skills. So being able to use things like Microsoft Excel, for example, becoming proficient in those packages that would be required in the workplace. And Zoha is now a global IT procurement assistant manager for Unilever and works with suppliers to procure IT systems and solutions for the company, and absolutely loves what she does. Another one is Rob. Rob did a 3-week placement with Accenture, and he was offered an apprenticeship after this, and he's now, because of what he did during his program and subsequently his apprenticeship but now he works on voice activated technologies, which is fabulous, and is also studying for a tech degree. So both of them have said, the basis of what they got from their programs and subsequently built on with that continued learning and development that we've talked about, has really helped them in their employment journeys. And, we're just very privileged, to play a small part in that journey for our young people. But they're just a couple that have gone on to really successful careers.
And given what you described at the start about the fact that the people who come onto your programs are not in education, they're not in employment, they're not in training, so these aren't people who were off on a high trajectory before they ever got involved, doesn't that show what the opportunity, providing digital training, providing the support, providing the employability, can do actually for both sides? So the people end up in these wonderful careers, and companies who would otherwise be missing out on people who are clearly very talented to be able to move into those kind of roles aren't lost. And that's got to be a massive opportunity out there for companies. I've got another couple of questions I want to ask Gillian, but I'm going to start deferring to some of the questions that we've got coming through on the Q&A. If you have a question, as I say, do pop it in the Q&A part of your Zoom window. So Paul Clayton has said that IT as a focus remains problematic. Foundation literacy skills need to be a priority. Would supporting teachers in real life be an option for some of the work you do?
I think that's a really, really great point, actually. And I should add, I've clearly focused here on sort of digital skilling, but our employability curriculum actually goes much further than that as well. And it does actually bring in, you know, basic numeracy, literacy, etc. But working to support teachers in real life, yes, that obviously could be an option. You know, the earlier that we can, you know, help and or provide additional support to people that need it, you know, to give them those foundation skills that will help to set them up for success, you know, absolutely. We focus, like I've said, we're post-school, you know, so we're kind of that 16 to 30, although predominantly we're 18 to 30. And that's simply because there's additional safeguarding, etc., that would obviously be required for those under 18. But I think, you know, going back to something that Elizabeth said at the start, you know, everything that we do in this space to help, you know, skill the workforce of today, the future, to support our country's growth, you know, it needs to be a collaborative effort. You know, we can't do things in isolation. There needs to be a joined up sort of strategy, you know, it comes together between, you know, charity, you know, government, you know, education sector. It really needs to be that holistic sort of piece of work that comes together, I think, to drive the greatest impact. So no one party, I think, can do it in isolation.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of what the DPA stands for as an alliance, includes in the name, Digital Poverty Alliance. And there are so many different pieces and there's so many different roles that every sector of society can play in tackling what are some really complicated issues that underlie, whether it's digital poverty, whether it's getting young people out of unemployment and into a career that they can enjoy. And there's massive overlaps around a number of these subjects, but of course, teachers and schools are overburdened with so much that they're being asked to do. So it's also, how can that education system create the time and the space that's needed for teachers to be able to take that time? We have another question from another attendee. So their focus is currently on NEET care leavers. What specific support do Movement to Work offer to employers taking on a cohort who have a specific set of additional challenges?
Great question. So we work very closely, like I said, with a number of youth outreach organisations and other charities. One of those that we have a very good, strong partnership with is the Carers Trust. And what we do is we frequently actually hold what we term youth voice sessions with Carers Trust, with young carers from, you know, across regions, and we sit down and we ask them some questions around access to work or even pre-employability sort of opportunities. What are the barriers that they have or perceive? How do they perceive employers as well? What additional support could employers be providing to young carers? And we take that insight and data and we share that back with our employer community as well. And we have some clearly that are part of the Care Leavers Covenant, etc., and things as well. But it's really important for us to be able to take real-time insights and feedback from young people, from certain groups and communities, and feed that back to employers, because only then can we be offering what we need them to be offering. You know, we need to support young people in the best way that they need, and that is constantly evolving as well. We've seen that particularly with the pandemic, you know, and the impact of that and the aftermath of it. You know, we can't just offer a program and it stands still. You know, everything that we do needs to be refined and reflected on and tweaked accordingly. But we do work very closely with the Carers Trust. So apologies, the names disappeared, but if you wanted to drop me a note afterwards, we could have a talk about opportunities for NEET care leavers.
That's a fantastic offer, Gillian, to get in touch. I think the question came through as anonymous, so do put your name in the chat, and then we can pick up on that and make sure that's a connection made, which is a great outcome from any event. And Gillian, how do young people find out about this opportunity? Does it tend to be through schools? Do people tend to find it online, which of course presents certain challenges? If you're not online, how do you find out about opportunities? Is there other signposting?
Yeah, very much so. So obviously there is some online promotion as well. And we work closely with Get My First Job actually to promote any pre-employability opportunities that we have. But to your point, we have to explore other channels as well, because we know that not all young people have that access. So what we work very closely with DWP, both the job centres, but also the National Youth Hub network as well, which is really, really key, I think, to helping young people understand some of the opportunities that are out there that are not just like a direct entry level job, because a lot of young people need that essential pre-piece before they get to that stage. So we work with the youth hubs to and with the work coaches in that environment, who are obviously spending time with young people and supporting them, you know, on their journey. So that's a really critical part of it for us as well. For those that are you know, that do have a phone, that are on TikTok, which we're hearing more and more about, you know, we are really trying to shift the dial on that as well, and encourage our employers to be thinking about how they speak to young people on platforms like that as well, because the chances are young people are not going to go onto your company's website and, you know, onto a careers page. They want to learn about your company on something like TikTok. That's where they consume their news, their learning. So for those that do have access and that can access TikTok, you know, there's a real opportunity there actually as well for employers to speak directly to young people in an environment that they're comfortable in as well. So there's a whole array of things, Elizabeth, yeah, that we need to think about when we're speaking to young people. A really critical part of that as well is the partner network, so the youth outreach organisations that we work with. We know that day in, day out, that they are, you know, speaking and working with young people in their sort of local communities. So we make sure that any opportunities that we have, they are aware of it. We do that through a bi-weekly youth opportunities bulletin, and it's for that network of people who work with and for young people to help match them in to the right opportunity for them.
And that's okay. It's not just about people or young people finding a job, it's actually finding a job that they're interested in, that they're going to find fulfilling, or that they can learn from.
Absolutely.
Pauline O'Hare has asked, one, whether you could share some of your research, she'd love to connect, but also whether you cover the whole of the UK or just England or just part.
So absolutely, I'm happy to share what I've pulled from all my sources and things. So yes, I can do that. We actually are UK wide. So we are Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales. We are trying to we're trying to grow a bit more in Scotland, because it's probably on a slightly lesser scale than the rest of the UK. But we do have UK wide coverage. Yes.
Amazing. And Paul Aman from Liverpool has asked whether you provide real living wage compliant placements, or are they volunteer roles?
It's a very, very good question. Yeah. So we have a set of principles. So when an employer signs up, we ask them to make a pledge. Like I said, there's no contract or anything like that, but that pledge commitment is them saying they will abide by these guiding principles. One of that is around, you know, looking for to pay for an opportunity. And if they can't pay that opportunity for whatever reason, they provide other things like travel costs. We've got companies covering lunch costs just now. Uniforms are always provided. In fact, you know, we've heard some really lovely stories recently in the hospitality sector where young people are given their own whites, but they are personalised. All these things that can make such a difference to the experience for the young person. There's some really innovative things going on as well, actually, in the engineering sector. It was a 6-month pay placement, which is pretty fantastic, actually. And not only that, that company as well, that company also helped to cover childcare arrangements and costs for young parents.
That's amazing. And that shows a real level of insight from the company and the people running the program.
It really does. It really does. You know, it just shows them being in touch with the current environment that young people find themselves in. So it extended to that level of support.
That's incredible. And presumably you were talking earlier about remote work experience. Does this give young people a chance to find out about careers that they never even knew were an option? Because there's so much out there now, so many jobs that didn't exist even when I was a child.
It does. And actually, that's what we always say about, you know, a pre-employability program and placement as well. It's about finding out if that organisation and that culture is the right fit for the young person. You know, it's a two-way process. It's not just about the organisation finding a prospective employee. It's about them really testing a particular sector, a particular role, and finding out whether that's something that they would like to pursue. So absolutely, yes.
Well, yes, and personally, I always think that it is just as important to find something you don't like doing as it is to find something you do love doing. It's nothing worse than pursuing a career to only find that actually it wasn't everything you dreamed of when you could get there.
Exactly.
So those kind of placements are actually a really good way to test out some different things, see some different roles, find different cultures, and see what works for you. If we have anyone on here who would like to find out more about Movement to Work, how would they do that, Gillian?
They can find me on LinkedIn if they so wish, and we can connect on there. Or indeed I can pop my email address into the chat along with the research that I'm just about to do. But we do have a website as well, actually. So there's an employer section on there. You can go on, have a look at how other employers are running their programs, the benefits and the value that they get from that as well. But alongside that, we've got some really nice testimonials from young people who have shared just actually what it means to have been supported through a program like this and the start, and quite frankly, quite often life-changing opportunity that it's afforded them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gillian. It's been a really, really good session and really inspiring to hear about the impact that these kind of programs can have on young people. And that reminder to us all that we pulled out at the beginning that young people are not necessarily as digitally literate or digitally native as is so generally assumed around the UK. We do have our next webinar coming up hot on our heels. So on Friday, we'll be hearing from Professor Simeon Yates about the minimum standard of digital living. That is a really important piece of work as we look at what is now an essential tool for so many of us, arguably for everybody across the UK in our daily lives, whether that is education, whether it's health, whether it's employment, or whether it's accessing welfare services, or even just entertainment. So we'll be coming back to see you at 2 o'clock on Friday. Do sign up for that if you haven't already. I can see Ellie has put the link in the chat. Do also visit digitalpovertyalliance.org, where you can find out about our National Delivery Plan, which we released at the House of Lords last month. We'd love you to take a look at that, look at the actions that we have on that document, and think about how you as an organisation, whether you're a company, a local authority, a government department, a charity, a community group, what role can you play in helping us end digital poverty once and for all by 2030? Thank you all for joining us. If you do have any further questions, you can also keep this conversation going in our community hub. Again, the link will be on the digitalpovertyalliance.org website, and we'd love to see you there. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thank you again, Gillian, for a fascinating.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.